All right, folks. I said on Thursday I was done missing days. I was definitely gonna be back on Friday, but what can I say? Uh, I got a new editing PC, and it's not high end or anything. Obviously, I don't have much editing to do in this channel. But believe it or not, I'll go through a little bit of a journey before I get into the main event today, which is Russia hilariously trolling the Biden administration. But I started out uh, editing, if you could. Well, actually, I did do it. I did edit. I used to actually take some time and edit out any sort of stutters, any anything like that on this channel when I first started. And I was using a laptop with a that even by that point was close to 10 years old. And I believe it had a first generation dual core Intel i5 with integrated graphics. I actually, unrelated to this channel, I ran Handbrake on that laptop to try and apply subtitles to a foreign film. And it wasn't an anime, it was a Spanish film. And I applied English subtitles to it because I was assigned to watch it for a class. It's a funny story, in college. But there was no version with English subtitles available, so they gave me the Spanish version on DVD. And so I went and found English subs online, in a file, and so I had to look up how to apply English subs to burn it to a DVD, and that was how I did the assignment. It took a long time, as you might imagine, with first generation i5 integrated graphics. And so I took a huge step up in soon after starting this channel. I said, you know what, the laptop's got to go. And I bought a desktop that was just as old, but at least then I could have a dedicated GPU. And the GPU was bottlenecked to hell by the, again, first generation, this time quad core. I stepped up to a quad core for the first time in my life, i7. Well, fast forward to yesterday, and in the mail came a not 10-year-old but 6-year-old Xeon workstation, which is now a 6-core. So I finally have a 6-core processor. But it didn't come with a video card or a hard drive or anything. So had to get the NVMe installed and the video card and get all the drivers and everything set up and set up Windows. And so I did not have time by the end of, I got done like 10 o'clock last night. I was working on it for quite a while. I was mixing and matching RAM. Turns out, hey, you buy a server, it has to take special RAM. It doesn't take standard DDR4 RAM. So I'm sorry if you're all bored with the computer talk, but now instead of being able to take like what does it take me normally, like 5 minutes for to process a video with my current 13-year-old PC. Now with this 6-year-old one, it should do it in like 10 seconds, I would think. I haven't tried it yet. But, for what I do on this channel, a still image with audio, it shouldn't take long. Fun fact, there was a short time after I got the desktop before I upgraded the video card to a GTX 1650 Super, which is not a powerful card, but again, way bottlenecked by that system. The stock card was a GeForce 310. It wasn't even a GT. It was just a plain GeForce 310. Look that one up. I think it was an OEM exclusive. I still have it. And boy, was that slow to edit. Other than that, though, it's an excellent PC for just running normal Windows. I think it'll certainly serve someone else well. It's just who just needs a plain old computer. But anyway, that is why I was not here yesterday. The family issue with the person in the hospital, they're better now, so I should have no more excuses. I got the new PC all set up, Windows is installed. all my data is transferred over. I got all the archives of this channel moved over. Believe it or not, all of the data, all of the images, thumbnails, videos, and audio files for this channel, up until this point, have been stored on a 11-year-old SATA hard drive. And it was one of those big, what is it? Not the 2.5 inch. It was like, I guess it would be a 3.5 inch. Although it looked bigger than that, but I don't think it was a 5 inch by any means. Anyway, it's a miracle that that thing has lasted as long as it has, and that I was able to get all the data off of it. And now we have moved on from SATA. I'm officially joined the world of NVMe. And wow, what a way, what a way to waste 6 minutes talking about excuses as to why I put nothing up yesterday. That could have just been the video. It could have just been me talking about my excuse for not putting anything out yesterday. So, on to the main topic. I guess I'll put in the description, hey, skip 6 minutes in if you want to actually hear what matters, and not just about my personal struggles using ancient computer hardware. Alexei Navalny has been sentenced to, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years in prison. And we are constantly told by Western media, Alexei Navalny is the leader of the opposition in Russia, which is not technically true, since I don't think anyone from his party has even been elected to the Duma. I don't know how many people are actually in his party. Doesn't seem to be a lot. Because there are quite a few political parties that are more popular than Alexei Navalny's, believe it or not. It's not just like, okay, you've got the Putinists and then you've got the Navalnyists. That's what we're told to believe by like the BBC and CNN. But you go over to Russia, there are quite a few parties that are, not all of which are pro-Putin. There is a Putin party. It's called United Russia. And then there are other parties that are not United Russia, and none of them are led by Alexei Navalny. You've got the communists, you've got the ultra-nationalists, but even amongst Russian liberals, I'm not sure that this Navalny guy is seen as like their leader. But I mean, Russian, Western-style liberals, who believe in like, American supremacy and NATO dominance. They're a fairly small minority in Russia, as it is, because I mean, as you might imagine, NATO's whole existence is defined by opposing Russia. Like when Russia wanted to join NATO, NATO was like, no, thank you. Then what reason do we have to exist? You can't be in NATO. Like our whole job is to oppose you. That was what Russia was, or that's what NATO was created for. It was created in the was it the British? The first guy, he was the first NATO Secretary General. I believe he was British, and his quote was, "NATO exists to keep the Americans in, the Russians out, and the Germans down." Okay, so make sure Germany is pathetic and feckless, check. Make sure the Americans are in, check. The Americans are everywhere across Europe, everywhere but Russia and Belarus at this point. We've got the Americans have completely permeated Ukraine. The Americans have, Poland is just, it's completely an American landing pad. All these other places, they all want to have their American troops. They're everywhere across Europe except for Russia at this point. So that check. And then 3, keep the Russians out. Well, guess what? The Russians aren't anywhere except for Russia and Belarus, which at the time, certainly, in which that quote was uttered, or the phrase was coined by the NATO Secretary General, everyone would have understood that White Russia was a part of Russia. And most people, I think, would have thought that Ukraine was certainly a part of Russia. In fact, they would have just, regarded all of the Eastern Bloc as as acceptable as Russia's domain. It wasn't until the fall of the Eastern Bloc that everyone said, well, gee, we can't have Russians anywhere, not even in Russia. And that's where you get these folks, the myths in the West of people like Alexei Navalny, who I think fairly has been compared to Lyndon LaRouche, which during the Cold War, the Soviets had a pro-Soviet cultist in America. His name was Lyndon LaRouche, and if you were in the Soviet Union, you knew who Lyndon LaRouche was. He was the real leader of the American people. I mean, he was the people's choice. It was the American capitalists who suppressed the people and kept Lyndon LaRouche out of power. But if the people had their way, of course, everyone knows that Lyndon LaRouche would have been our leader if we had real democracy in this country. Now, you as an American might find this strange. You might say, who is this person? I've never heard of him. And that's because he was a crazy cultist, and no one actually cared about him except for his few cult followers. And I see something very similar when it comes to Alexei Navalny. Now, I wouldn't call him a cult leader. I wouldn't go that far. It might be true, but I haven't seen evidence of that, so I'm not going to call Alexei Navalny a cult leader, but I would say he certainly has a niche audience. And so if this guy isn't popular, if this guy isn't actually a serious contender, a serious opposition leader to Putin, why am I talking about him? Why does the West talk about him? Well, that's a better question. Why does the West talk about him so much? And by the West, I mean Western media. And why is it that Western intelligence pushes this guy in Western media? I guess because he's probably just their guy. It's probably the best person that they have co-opted in Russia. He's probably their most prominent ally, which is pretty pathetic if you think about it, that they don't have any actual major Russian leader who is, in the bag, in the sack for NATO. So that explains why, that can explain why NATO and the NATO-aligned media push this guy and why they talk about him. Well, why am I bringing him up today? I haven't even gotten to the news yet. Well, the news is he's been sentenced. Oh, wait, yeah, I did. I mentioned he was sentenced to 40 years in prison, right? And this comes the same week that Trump has been indicted again, but he's indicted now for January 6th. He's an insurrectionist. He committed fraud against the United States. Guess who else was convicted of fraud? That's right, it was Alexei Navalny. I don't know if this particular case, this current charge, was about fraud, but in the past he was convicted of fraud. That's what the Russian government charged him with. And now he's been sentenced to 40 years in prison, which Trump is facing more than 40 years in prison. Not that Trump will live that long. But I have to think that this conviction and this sentence was just Russia's way of trying to troll the West for prosecuting Trump and trying to lock him up for even longer. Because the narrative is, oh, well, Trump is a Russian stooge, he's Putin's puppet. Well, if you're in Russia, they say that Navalny is NATO's puppet. So in this case, he'd be Biden's puppet. And so Biden tries to put Putin's puppet away for the rest of his life. Putin says, well, Biden, I'll put your puppet away for the rest of his life. That way we're even. And so the troll move here is that obviously NATO and the U.S. State Department have no self-awareness. And so they condemn Russia for putting Navalny away for decades because they say, oh, he's the opposition leader, even though he's not literally the opposition leader. He is a leader of some people, sure, who opposes the current government, sure. So in a very loose sense, he is an opposition leader. And so they're saying, well, obviously this is a political prosecution because you shouldn't be locking up your political enemies. They say as they are in the process of prosecuting the leader of the opposition in America, the real leader of the opposition, who represents half the country, and they are prosecuting him in all these different jurisdictions across the country where he's going to have to defend himself simultaneously against criminal charges in multiple different states and federal jurisdictions. But yeah, it's totally wrong when Russia does it. When Russia does it, that's a dictatorship. And so, sure, you can make that argument. You can say that what Russia did to this guy is totally wrong. You could call it a political prosecution. Go right ahead. I never really disputed that. I've never said, oh, this Navalny guy, he's actually a high-level criminal, and it's good that Russia took him out. I don't know anything about the guy. He might be, he might not be. But if you really want to poke fingers, yeah, guess what? America is a corrupt, oligarchical dictatorship as well. But you knew that already if you were listening to this channel. You likely subscribed to this channel because you already believed that. You didn't need me to tell you that. Unfortunately, it's not like I have enough influence to try and wake up new people. But maybe if I scream enough into the darkness, one day someone's mind will be changed because of something I said. And then maybe I'll sleep a little better at night knowing I made a difference in the world. Until then, though, I will just continue to complain for my own satisfaction and point out. I try and find occasionally things that can be a source of joy in this ridiculous world, and poking fun at the absurdity of it all is one of the deepest wells I think we have access to. So, with that said, I will see you when I see you. I'm not going to say it again. I think I'm not going to say I'll see you tomorrow until I get at least a week straight of not missing any days, because after last week, that was pathetic.